It seems like everyone's talking about how much tech is changing healthcare these days, and
Yeah,
it's pretty wild to see.
it is.
So today we're going to zero in on something specific within that larger trend,
Okay.
which is the whole world of digital stethoscopes.
All right.
We've got a report that really dives into the year 2025.
Okay.
And we want to sort of extract the key insights, like where this market's at right now,
Yeah.
where it's headed, and what's really driving all of that.
Sounds good.
For anyone listening who maybe isn't super familiar,
Yeah.
it's worth remembering that a digital stethoscope basically takes the regular stethoscope that we all know and adds a bunch of electronic features.
Exactly.
So you can amplify sounds, you can record them,
Right.
and often there's some kind of connectivity involved as well.
Yeah, that's a key part of it.
Like you can even hook it up to a computer or a smartphone.
Yeah.
So our goal is to go through this 2025 report and try to give you a really clear picture
Okay.
of where this market's at and where it's going in the future.
I think that'll be super valuable for your listeners.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump right into it.
Okay.
The report kicks off with a global market overview,
Okay.
and it's got some pretty interesting numbers.
Yeah.
In 2025, the worldwide market for digital stethoscopes is projected to be worth $282.4 million US.
Wow. That's a pretty decent chunk of change.
It is. It gives you a sense of just how big this market already is.
Yeah.
And the forecast suggests that this is really just the beginning.
Interesting.
By 2033, they're predicting that this market will grow to $456.94 million.
That's a lot of growth.
It is.
What's the growth rate like?
Yeah, so that's actually even more telling, I think.
Okay.
The compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, from 2025 to 2033 is projected to be 6.20%.
So that's a pretty steady climb.
Exactly. It shows that there's a sustained and growing demand for these tools.
Makes sense.
So, with that in mind,
Yeah.
I think it's worth asking, what's actually driving this growth?
Yeah. What are the big factors?
What are the things that are really pushing this market forward?
Absolutely.
So, according to the report, one of the main catalysts is this increasing use of telemedicine
Oh, yeah. I can see how that would play a role.
and remote patient monitoring
Mm-hmm.
as healthcare is evolving to try and reach patients in all sorts of different settings.
Right.
The ability to do exams remotely is becoming super important,
Sure.
and digital stethoscopes offer a really big advantage there.
So, for example, a specialist could listen to a patient's heart,
Yeah.
even if they're not physically in the same room.
Exactly. That's huge.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it.
It is.
Yeah.
So instead of just having the stethoscope for a traditional physical exam,
Right.
you're actually extending the reach of those diagnostic capabilities.
It's like taking the stethoscope to a whole new level.
It is.
What else is driving this growth?
Well, another really important driver is this integration of AI and IoT.
AI and IO. Okay.
So we're talking about artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things
Right, right.
and how they're being incorporated into these digital stethoscopes.
Interesting.
So instead of just making sounds louder,
yeah.
AI is actually being used to analyze those sounds.
Oh, wow.
They're training algorithms on these massive data sets of heart and lung sound.
So it's not just about amplifying, it's about analyzing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And these algorithms can actually identify subtle patterns that could indicate a problem.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, sometimes even in real time as they're listening.
And with IoT connectivity, that data can be easily shared with
Exactly.
other healthcare providers.
So you can imagine a doctor listening to a patient's heart,
Yeah.
and the AI is sort of running in the background,
Yeah.
analyzing those sounds and flagging anything that seems unusual.
Right.
And then that information could be sent directly to a cardiologist or someone else who needs to see it.
That's amazing.
It's really taking this very basic tool
Yeah.
and adding all these layers of intelligence and connectivity.
It's incredible how technology is transforming healthcare.
It is.
Yeah.
So we've got the rise of telemedicine,
Mm-hmm.
we've got AI and IoT integration.
Right.
What's the third big factor that the report highlights?
Well, the third key driver is a bit more somber, unfortunately. It's the rising prevalence of heart and lung diseases worldwide.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern.
It is.
And as these conditions become more common,
Yeah.
there's naturally a greater need for accurate and effective diagnostic tools.
Makes sense.
And digital stethoscopes have the potential to be really helpful here.
Yeah, because they could offer more precise readings
Exactly.
and potentially even detect problems earlier.
Right, which is key.
Absolutely.
So it's like this perfect storm in a way.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
You've got the way healthcare is being delivered, changing.
Yeah.
You've got all this amazing technology being built into these tools.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got this growing need for better diagnostics.
It's all coming together to drive this market forward.
It is.
Are there any roadblocks or challenges that we should be aware of?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And the report does point to a couple of things.
Okay.
One is the cost.
Oh, yeah, I bet digital stethoscopes are more expensive than traditional ones.
They are, definitely.
So that could be a barrier for some folks.
Exactly, especially in places where healthcare budgets are already stretched thin.
Right.
And the other big concern is data security and privacy.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge issue these days.
It is, and since these devices are often storing and transmitting really sensitive medical info, it's super important to make sure that everything is secure.
Absolutely. Any data breaches would be a disaster.
They could really damage trust in this whole technology.
Right.
So those are a couple of the potential speed bumps on the hill to wider adoption.
Makes sense.
Now, shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
the report also highlights some key trends that are shaping this market.
Oh, that's interesting.
What are some of the cool things happening in this space?
Well, one really clear trend is the increasing sophistication of AI
Oh,
for
whoa.
these digital stethoscopes.
So the algorithms are getting even smarter.
Exactly.
Wow.
We're seeing a shift towards AI that can actually help doctors identify a wider range of conditions.
And with even greater accuracy.
That's right.
That's amazing.
It's like having a superpowered diagnostic assistant right there in your pocket.
It is. So that's a great way to put it.
What's another trend that stood out to you?
Well, this one's not surprising given what we talked about earlier, but the popularity of wireless and Bluetooth-enabled stethoscopes is exploding.
Yeah, I can see why.
It just makes so much sense for remote monitoring.
Right, it streamlines everything.
Exactly. It fits perfectly into those telemedicine workflows that we were discussing.
And it gives both doctors and patients more flexibility.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a good sense of the overall trends and drivers. Now let's break it down by region.
All right.
The report provides a really detailed snapshot of the market size in 2025
Okay.
and the projected growth rates in different parts of the world.
Let's start with North America.
Okay, so North America is projected to be the largest market in 2025.
Interesting.
It's expected to rake in over 40% of global revenue.
Wow, that's a big chunk.
It is. We're talking about a market size of $112.96 million.
That's a lot of stethoscopes.
However, their projected CAGR from 2025 to 2033 is a bit lower than some other regions.
Okay.
It's estimated to be around 4.4%.
So still growth, but not as explosive as some other places.
Exactly.
Got it.
And within North America,
Yeah.
the U.S. is the dominant market.
Okay.
It's projected to be worth $89.13 million in 2025 with a CAGR of 4.2%.
What about Canada?
Canada is estimated to be at $13.56 million with a slightly higher CAGR of 5.2%.
Okay.
And Mexico is at $10.28 million with a CAGR of 4.9%.
So they're all seeing pretty solid growth.
They are.
What about Europe?
So Europe is the second largest market globally.
Okay.
It's projected to account for over 30% of the market share.
Wow, that's significant.
It is, with a market size of $84.72 million in 2025. And their CAGR is a bit higher than North America's. It's at 4.7%.
So a bit faster growth there.
Exactly.
What are the key players in Europe?
Germany is the largest market within Europe.
Okay.
It's estimated to be at $16.77 million with a CAGR of 4.9%.
What about the UK?
The UK follows closely behind at $14.23 million with a CAGR of 5.5%.
Okay.
And then there's Russia at $13.13 million with a CAGR of 3.7%.
Any other notable markets in Europe?
Yeah, so France is estimated to be at $7.79 million with a CAGR of 3.9%.
Okay.
Italy's at $7.29 million with a 4.1% CAGR.
And Spain?
Spain's at $6.95 million with a 3.8% CAGR.
So a mix of growth rates across different European countries.
Exactly, reflecting different healthcare systems and levels of tech adoption.
Makes sense.
Now let's shift our focus to Asia Pacific.
Okay.
This is a region that's often seen as having huge potential for growth.
Yeah, it's a real hotbed of innovation.
It is, and the digital stethoscope market is no exception.
What are the numbers looking like there?
Well, in 2025, their market share is projected to be around 23% globally, with a size $64.95 million.
And what about their growth rate?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Their CAGR from 2025 to 2033 is a whopping 8.2%.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's the highest growth rate of any region.
So Asia Pacific is really leading the charge.
They are, and it makes sense when you think about the rapid development happening there.
Right, they're investing heavily in healthcare and adopting new technologies quickly.
Exactly.
Which countries are driving this growth in Asia Pacific?
China is the largest market in the region.
Okay.
It's estimated to be at $27.28 million with a CAGR of 7.7%.
What about India?
India is actually the real standout here.
Oh, really?
They've got a market size of $7.79 million.
Okay.
but their CAGR is a remarkable 10%.
Wow, that's double-digit growth.
It is. They're really embracing this technology.
That's amazing.
It is.
Are there any other notable markets in the region?
Yeah, Japan is estimated to be at $8.96 million with a CAGR of 6.7%.
Okay.
South Korea is at $6.50 million with a CAGR of 7.3%.
And Australia?
Australia's at $3.38 million with a CAGR of 4.4%.
So a lot of variation within the region.
There is, but overall, it's a really dynamic and exciting market.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to Latin America.
Right?
What's the outlook for digital stethoscopes in that region? So Latin America has a market share of over 5% globally.
Okay.
With a size of $14.12 million in 2025.
And what about their growth rate?
Their CAGR is projected to be 5.6%.
So a solid and steady growth trajectory.
Exactly.
Got it.
Brazil is the biggest market in Latin America.
Okay.
It's at $6.04 million with a CAGR of 6.2%.
And what about Argentina?
Argentina's at $2.37 million with a CAGR of 6.5%.
Colombia.
Colombia is at $1.26 million with a 5.4% CAGR.
Peru.
Peru's at $1.16 million with a 5.8% CAGR.
Okay.
And Chile is at $1.02 million with a 5.9% CAGR.
So a lot of positive movement in Latin America.
There is.
Yeah.
And the report points to things like increasing digitization of healthcare
Mm-hmm.
and rising investments in medical technology as the main drivers.
That makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
Finally, let's talk about the Middle East and Africa.
Okay.
What's the situation in that region? The Middle East and Africa currently have a smaller market share.
Okay.
It's around 2% globally.
All right.
With a size of $5.65 million in 2025.
And what about their projected growth?
Their CAGR is projected to be 5.9%.
So still positive growth, but starting from a smaller base.
Exactly.
Got it.
The GCC countries make up the largest segment within that region.
Okay.
They're at $2.42 million with a CAGR of 6.7%.
South Africa.
South Africa follows at $0.89 million with a CAGR of 6.9%.
Egypt.
Egypt and Nigeria are both estimated to be at $0.59 million
Okay.
with CAGRs of 6.2% and 5% respectively.
Turkey.
Turkey is at $0.49 million with a CAGR of 5.4%.
Okay.
And the rest of the Middle East and Africa region
Yeah.
is at $0.67 million with a CAGR of 4.9%.
So overall, some promising growth in the Middle East and Africa.
There is. The report suggests that this is being driven by things like improved healthcare infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
and a growing willingness to adopt these newer diagnostic tools.
That's encouraging to hear.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered the regional breakdown,
Yeah.
and we've seen that there's positive growth across the board.
Right.
But the rates and the underlying factors are pretty different depending on where you look.
For sure. Asia Pacific is really standing out in terms of its potential.
Absolutely.
Now, what about the different ways these digital stethoscopes are being used?
Yeah, that's a great point.
The report breaks down the market by application and end user.
Exactly.
So let's dive into that.
Okay, so when it comes to applications,
Yeah.
the report identifies cardiac and pulmonary disease as the dominant segment.
Okay, so heart and lung conditions.
Exactly, and that makes sense.
Right, those are some of the most common health issues globally.
They are.
And digital stethoscope can really help with diagnosing and monitoring them,
Exactly. They offer really precise auscultation capabilities.
which basically means better listening to those heart and lung sounds.
Right, and that can lead to earlier, more accurate diagnoses.
What about the fastest growing application areas?
So the area that's seeing the most rapid growth is actually the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, or PIC.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
It is, and it highlights this growing focus on specialized pediatric care.
Right, and the unique needs of infants and children.
Exactly.
Why is the PIC seeing such rapid growth?
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
Infants and young children can't always communicate what's wrong.
Right.
So those subtle heart and lung sounds even more important to pick up on.
I see.
And digital stethoscopes can amplify those sounds really clearly.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of end users,
Yeah.
hospitals and primary care centers are currently the biggest users of digital stethoscopes.
Okay, so those are the main settings for diagnosis and treatment.
Exactly.
And why are they the dominant users?
Well, they benefit the most from all the advanced features that these devices offer.
Like what?
Things like sound amplification to cut through noise,
Right.
noise cancellation for busy environments,
Yeah.
and connectivity to easily integrate data into patient records.
It's all about making those workflows smoother.
Exactly.
What about the fastest growing end user segment?
So the fastest growing segment is actually clinics.
Oh, interesting.
And this probably reflects a couple of things.
Like what?
One is this increasing focus on high-quality care in outpatient settings,
Mm-hmm.
and the other is the need for better diagnostic accuracy and efficiency in those environments.
And digital stethoscopes can really help with that.
They can make a big difference.
So we're seeing adoption spread beyond hospitals into a wider range of clinical settings.
Exactly, which is a good sign. It
Okay.
shows that these tools are becoming more accepted and more widely used.
Now, let's wrap things up by talking about the competitive landscape.
Okay?
The report gives a glimpse into the companies that are shaping this market.
Yeah, it's a pretty competitive space.
It is, and the key players are really focused on innovation.
What kinds of innovations are we talking about?
Well, they're investing heavily in things like AI-powered analysis,
Hmm.
seamless IoT integration, and wireless connectivity.
So making these devices smarter, more connected, and easier to use.
Exactly.
And what are their main strategies for competing?
Besides innovation,
Yeah.
they're also focused on forming strategic partnerships
Okay.
and expanding their reach into new markets.
So global expansion is a key goal.
It is. They want to get these tools into the hands of as many healthcare providers as possible.
And what about their target markets? Well, they're really trying to develop solutions that are cost-effective and user-friendly
Okay.
so that they can appeal to both developed and emerging markets.
That's smart.
They need to make sure their products are accessible to everyone who needs them.
Are there any specific examples of companies doing cool things in this space?
Yeah, the report actually highlights a couple of interesting cases from 2022.
Oh, cool.
So 3M's Littman Core Digital Stethoscope got an honorable mention for its innovative design.
And what about the other example?
Sidiak Mohali in India launched the first AI-enabled stethoscope specifically designed for telemedicine.
That's awesome.
It shows how these companies are really tailoring their products to specific needs.
And pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Absolutely.
So, to recap our deep dive into this digital stethoscope market report,
Yeah.
we're looking at a market that's poised for some pretty substantial growth globally.
Yeah, exactly.
And that growth is being fueled by the rise of telemedicine,
Mhm.
the integration of AI and IoT,
Right.
and the unfortunate but very real increase in heart and lung diseases worldwide.
It's a complex mix of factors. It is, but the overall message is clear.
What's that?
Digital stethoscopes are becoming a really important part of modern healthcare.
And they're only going to become more important in the years to come.
And as this technology keeps evolving,
Yeah.
it's going to be really interesting to see how it changes the way we do things.
Like what specifically?
Well, think about remote patient examinations and diagnostics.
Okay.
With AI-powered stethoscopes and telemedicine platforms,
Yeah.
we could potentially diagnose and monitor patients from anywhere in the world.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is, but it also raises some important questions.
Like what?
Well, how do we ensure data security and patient privacy in these increasingly connected systems?
Right, that's crucial.
And how do we make sure that everyone has access to this technology?
Not just those in wealthy countries.
Exactly.
Those are big questions.
They are, but they're questions that we need to be thinking about
Absolutely.
as these digital tools become more and more integrated into healthcare.
It's a really exciting time to be following this field.
It is. There's so much potential for positive change.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Me too.